Hi, we are Group A. I'm Soyan.
I'm Nate.
I'm Yuru.
Um, our interest in the cultural topic stems from our identity as international students. Two of group members are international students, and the number of international students are increasingly growing because of globalization. Overseas students who are experiencing culture shock need to understand the difference between cultures and to apply this knowledge to blend into the locals. Therefore, as the study environment exerts a far-reaching influence on students, the culture shock in the field of the study are of greater concern, which involves the differences of language, education mode, and logic pattern. So we're gonna start our presentation. Mm, So, so this is our index. Uh, we're gonna talk about third culture shock with three aspects: the language, logic, behavior, and also talk about solutions for international students and solutions from university perspective. So you're gonna start with language.
The first perspective of cultural difference is language barrier. As a child grows, so does her language ability. Her speech becomes more fluid, sentences longer, and structure more complex. But the accumulation of language happens within a cultural context, a context that drives much of how a child understands and produces her language. Culture can affect how much a child speaks, which in turn can affect her ability to speak. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Some cultures allow their children to engage in more speech practice. Others, such as that in Japan, perceive talkativeness in a negative way. In Japan, while practice does still make perfect, their culture also states that the mouth is the origin of misfortune. According to Journal of Child Language, this leads to Japanese children speaking less and in briefer sentences than their Western counterparts, who prefer to embellish and give long, detailed narratives of past events. Also, the structure of the focus of speech relies partly on culture. According to language scholar Erika Hoff, author of Language Development, children learn to structure their speech in one of two ways: topic-centric learning and topic-associating learning. Certain cultures, such as Western culture, focus on teaching with the focus on a single, clearly defined subject. This forces children to develop language skills to describe more deeply their thoughts on a specific issue. Other cultures, such as African American culture, are topic-associating learning. These cultures emphasize staying on a single topic and allow for more freedom of expression. While the human brain is wired to learn words the same way, regardless of culture, the culture is still determines what words a child learns. Although the general pattern is the same for children across the globe. For example, children always learn the word "not" before they learn the word "bibliography." But the pattern for the types of words they learn differs based on culture and language. For example, according to Hoff, American children learn vocabulary with a focus on nouns, with about half a child's first 50 words being nouns. In contrast, children in East Asian countries have a stronger bias towards learning verbs. Ignoring language differences, a difference in culture can even affect how two children learn the same language. The most noticeable aspect of this cultural effect is on pronunciation. New Yorkers and Texans say the same words, yet pronounce them differently. This is due to the exposure of sounds during childhood. Another difference is content. Children who have learned the same language in different cultures often learn that certain topics are off-limits in each other's cultures. For example, upon arriving in Singapore, you might find that "how much money do you make?" is a common question. This stems from cultural differences that guide how a person internalizes types of words and conversations. Next, So-Yeon is going to talk about logic pattern difference.
According to culture and point of view, Nisbet and Mazda say, East Asians and Westerners perceive through and think about the world in totally different perspectives. East Asians are obliged to see and think in the broad perceptual and conceptual field, focusing on context. Westerners are inclined to focus on focal object and to figure out the rules governing its behavior. Like Nisbet and Mazda say, there are significant differences between Easterners and Westerners in the perspectives to see the world, and those distinctional perspectives also can be seen in logic patterns. Logic patterns are formed on the basis of their environment, the background of life. Eastern culture is based on communitarianism, whereas Western culture is focusing on individualism. Generally, people from East live in complex social networks, while people from West are independent and they live in less social world. So, I'm a short video that explain the difference of large culture of Eastern and Western culture.
Hey man, I got something to tell you. Studying is future. Studying is future.
Hi, my name is Andrew Tech, and I am from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a third-year student at Harvard University studying biomedical engineering. I have 4 people in my family, my father, my mother, and I have an older sister. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that's really weird how you went to your family first. I feel like if somebody asked me to quickly introduce myself, I'd start off by saying, hi, my name's Jenny. I'm from California. I'm a third year at Harvard. I play volleyball. I sing. I don't know if I would jump straight to my family.
It doesn't come to me to talk about my family when someone asks me to introduce myself.
Yeah, straight off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have gotten there eventually. I don't know. I think that's kind of important, right?
You know, people really see themselves within the context of their family in Asian cultures, whereas in Western cultures, you really see yourself as an independent person, independent dreams, independent goals.
How does that apply?
Like the BDSM, listeners see and perceive themselves in personal and family relationships, but Westerners see themselves individual and independent objects. So next, we're gonna talk about behavior.
All right, so in talking about behavior, the behavioral differences between Eastern and Western cultures, and we've already kind of hinted at this, they live in complex social networks that are very interdependent and connected, very cognizant of the social realities of the environment. Whereas Western cultures are a little bit less constrained, and the ego and individuality reigns supreme. Eastern cultures engage in multiple and oftentimes very complex role relations with other individuals, and they're socially interdependent, always looking outward, trying to coordinate their actions with the other people around them in order to really minimize social friction. On the other hand, Western cultures are independent, autonomous, and very individualistic. And so in order to illustrate this, I found a great infographic series online created by Yang Liu. You can find the entire thing at bsix12.com, so b612.com. And I'm going to show them to you now. I think a lot of them speak for themselves. On the left-hand side, the blue side represents Western culture, and the right-hand side, the red, represents Eastern culture. So the differences are quite stark. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, right off the bat, we have the difference between lifestyle. We've talked quite a bit about this. Western culture is independent versus a very dependent social norm for Eastern cultures. Did not know this one. This was very interesting. I myself am not always the most punctual, but in Western cultures, there is an added emphasis placed on being right on time, whereas the idea of punctuality is a little bit more fluid in Eastern culture. I think that this is very emblematic of the differences. At a party, you can see, whereas in Eastern cultures, they don't necessarily stand around in a circle, but it's more inclusive of everybody. Let's see what everybody's doing and kind of keep everybody involved. Whereas in Western cultures, there may be smaller groups breaking off and having that more one-on-one interaction. I think this one speaks for itself because Western cultures are a little bit more individualistic. I think that they tend to see authority as maybe less important, those social roles, whereas Eastern cultures see authority in a bit of a different light. Again, this is kind of a minimizing of social friction here. It's that classic Western approach to problem solving. Let's barrel through it until it's solved. Whereas Eastern cultures a little bit more socially interdependent. Let's not ruffle too many feathers with our problem-solving approach. And then we've already talked about this quite a bit. The ego is vastly different. Standing in line, it's that same collectivist idea where, in Western cultures, you're in front of me, I'm behind you. That's how it's going to be. We are where we are. Whereas it's collectivist in the Eastern culture. Now, this is a generalization, of course, because Western culture is, there's still complexity, but it's a lot more straightforward. Kind of what you see is what you get, straight shooter. And then, of course, moods. Whereas Western cultures are going to be very emotive and expressive if they're upset with something. The collectivist tendency of Eastern cultures is going to show maybe be less expressive with moods so as to reduce social friction. So what are the implications of this? Basically, Western and Eastern cultures, as foreign exchange students are coming over, they need to be cognizant of these behavioral differences. Probably there could be, just because these cultural norms are so different, there could be this friction between, well, they did this, but I didn't quite understand it, and being cognizant of these differences and implications in all these situations should create much more understanding. And now Yuru is going to talk about solutions for foreign exchange students as they're coming over to the United States to help ease the cultural shock. Yuru?
It's very typical for international students to experience culture shock. So to help their preparations to study abroad, we have some tips for dealing with culture shock. First, improve language skills. The language barrier is often the main frustration when moving to a new country. Communicating verbally with natives is not the only hurdle, as signage or literature can also be highly confusing. University courses may also contain lots of terminology that overseas students may not be familiar with, or may translate differently from their native language. Make life easier by getting a head start on building language skills. For example, read course textbooks published in the language of destination country. This will help international students become familiar with the typography and style of language. The second tip is to get involved. Universities have many clubs and societies that international students can join. These are great places to take up or to continue with an activity or hobby. Not only that, but here international students can also meet a new set of friends. In addition, along with the language barrier and behavior difference, public transport can be extremely confusing and stressful in an unfamiliar country. If you need help and advice getting around, the university's international office will be able to help and will also be able to point in the right direction for bus and train timetables. The international office will be able to assist with any questions or queries, so make sure to go and pay them a visit. Next, So-Young will talk about solutions for universities.
So now I'm talk about the solutions for culture shock from university's perspective. Our university might use culture gathering including cultural events, which promotes interest and deliver knowledge about other different cultures in both way students and international students. Actually, international students with association try to deliver their for students, but it doesn't work out as well as people thought. So if kind of can be informed at university level, it might be helpful to understand unfamiliar culture. And for the university provides more systematic and organized session. Also, university offers some places that can open up way for others to meet all together, share their global with others, and build value based on the common interest. So, Nathan, to conclude our
All right. Well, with that, we have reached the end of our little webinar here on cultural shock. I hope it's been useful for you. To recap, we talked about the three different challenges of cultural shock that international students face coming over to a different culture. Language differences, logic differences, and behavioral differences. And then as So-Young and Yuro so succinctly laid out, there are lots of resources for international students, and Western students also need to make an effort to understand Eastern culture and lessen the cultural shock for all. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy your day.